everybody, this is Buddy Smooth Crypto, coming in with another lesson with the Crypto King. On today's episode, we'll be discussing trend lines, counter trend lines, and maybe other things too. But all right, Crypto King, you can take it away now.
Okay, so today we're on our Bitcoin paired with the US dollar. We're currently on the daily. Switch it over to the monthly time frame, and again here with the monthly time frame, each candlestick represents 1 month worth of trading. So from here, we're going to look at our monthly time frame of Bitcoin. Our trendline tool is over here on the left-hand side, the very first one. And so what you're looking for here is just seeing where here in April of this year, see where we could potentially go from here. So we're going to look for 2 touch points. So right now I'm looking at the candlestick from April and the candlestick from August, the wicks of both of them. So from here, it helps to adjust your chart just a little bit, get a better view of it. Then we want both of these wicks. We have this wick here, and we're using this second wick here right next to it, and then we just extended it out. As you extend the trend line out, you just want to pull the trend line out and watch those 2 areas up top to where the trend line is touching both of the wicks, the very tops of them. And from here, we could go down into the weekly time frame. So now each candlestick represents 1 week's worth of trading, and then we could adjust our trend line. So our trend line is here. This is our very first touch point on the top of the trend line. And then our second touch point was this wick right up here. Let me adjust the chart a little bit so I could get the end of the trend line. Bring it up. Now we're looking for that second touch point right on top. We'll lock it there. So we have the first touch point here on the 12th of April, and our second touch point here on May 10th of this year. And from here, this just gives us where price could potentially drive back into in the future. So as we had our first touch point here, second touch point, which validates the trend line, and then we just extended it out. So while we were down at these levels, the 30,000, 29,000 up to about 35,000, we knew if we were to start breaking to the upside, like we started doing here the 19th of July, when we started moving up, we would know that we're going to eventually retest this trend line that's been drawn. So that would help you enter or start filling your sell limits from trades you were accumulating back here. So that's one trend line. Now we will look for more of a counter trend line. So a main one that recently came into play, we'll click over here to get the trend line. We're looking right here on this red candle, the 22nd of February. That's where we're going to click the bottom portion of the wick. And then our second touch point here, the 19th of April. So we're going to drag it out, and I'm looking for that second touch point here. Keep dragging it out a little bit. Okay. So now that we have that trend line set, the counter trend line, we have that first touch point here, second touch point, which made the trend line, counter trend line valid to me. And then once we were below it, we knew, when price really started to rocket up, we knew where we could go. And this trend line was never retested truly until the 11th of October here recently, because we had these 2 touch points, and all this time while Bitcoin was down here starting to make its move up, all this time it took all these weeks until it finally started to retest this trend line. We could get the measuring tool out, click that. We're going to click here, February 22nd, and drag it out to October 11th. And as you can see, that was 33 bars. So it took 33 weeks in order for the trend line to be retested. So that just shows you, you know, even back here when we really were making some lows in May, throughout June, and then July, we started to move. All those months, it took us all those months, 33 weeks, till we finally retested that trend line back from mid-April. So right here is just really the basics with trend lines and counter trend lines. On my personal chart, I do have a lot of them, but just to keep it simple, we want...
Before you move on, so that's a regular trend line, right?
This one would just be considered a trend line.
This is the counter trend line. Okay.
Counter trend line.
So how did you get to what made you pick that specific wick?
Okay, so good question. Just because if you pick any other wicks, and this comes with just trial and error. So if I'm going off of this wick, which was a doji candle on the weekly time frame, so if I pick that wick, I would just look for a second touch point. So boom, here we just found another counter trend line. So if we would have had this drawn from this wick to this wick, when we broke the trend line here in the 17th of May, when we broke this counter trend line, we would know, okay, we've only had 1 and 2 true tests of this trend line. We would know when price started to move up, we're going to retest it. And we did right here the 18th of October.
Oh, okay.
So this would really be for swing trades and long-term investments. So to really benefit from this, you would just have to accumulate. So we have our first touch point, second touch point, and when we broke below that trend, you would just accumulate based on your Fibonacci retracement, based on your historic support and resistance. You would just have your buys. And then when we really started moving, you would know, okay, my unrealistic number is, you know, up here at the top of this trend line, which is 65,900. You would know, okay, when we made this move, I'm going to scale out 25% of my holdings. When we made this move back up here, I'm going to scale out another 25%. But, you know, if we hit the moon, we have still the top of this trend line. Because even here, when we were moving, we were nowhere near retesting the trend line. So that just gives you guidance in when to enter, when to exit. And these, in a more advanced lesson in the future, we could cover when to enter longs, when to enter shorts on the leverage side of things with trend lines and counter trend lines. So right now, just keeping it as basic as we can go. Let's just take a peek at it on the daily time frame. So now each candlestick represents one day worth of trading. And just see, we have the touch points over here. We have our second touch point, which on the daily time frame, it's just candle body. And then we have our retest pretty much to the wick here currently. So this is just another look at it. And for our regular trend line, we have it touching our wicks up here, touching the wicks down here before we retested it and broke above it. And more times than not to get too advanced, is you would expect this trend line to be retested down here before we made this big movement to the counter trend line up here. But again, that's a different video, a little bit more advanced.
Okay, that's good for now. We're gonna cut it there, guys. Like I said, we're gonna keep this video short and sweet. There'll be more lessons coming soon, hopefully.